So when you talk about, would it make sense to go door to door and knock on everyone's door and say, give us your silver, when the world is promoting gold and silver ownership to countries like India and China and Russia, China, who has state-sponsored gold and silver accumulation plans? If we were to do that, it's bad enough to confiscate Russian treasury bonds for whatever the reason that the U.S. government cited, which is in essence a default as the world reserve currency. It's another thing to activate eminent domain and take your own people's metal, and I think it's game over at that point. So instead,
lately, I've been hearing a lot chatter about silver being confiscated in the future, possibly, because I don't, it's all rumors at this point, but everything starts with whisper campaigns. And I want to know if that's possible because it is such an important source of military equipment and industrial use, and the price, they've been working so hard to keep it down, it's out of whack compared to how much is available, and what, the supply demand is way out of whack.
Something is happening in the gold and silver markets right now that most people will not recognize until it explodes into the headlines, and by then, it's already too late. While the world stays distracted with elections, inflation data, and stock market noise, the real story is unfolding where almost no one is looking. Inside government policy shifts, export restrictions, and strategic resource controls that reveal a major reset coming to precious metals. And Andy Schectman just issued one of the most serious warnings of his career. He's pointing to real-world events, hard evidence, and institutional behavior happening right now that signal a complete repricing of silver, possibly sooner than anyone expects if you hold silver or gold, or you've ever planned to. You need to hear this.
yeah, it is. It's irreplaceable. Not only is it the most conductive element known to science, but to your point, why would they do it? You could argue, aside from the military-industrial complex, which I have talked with you about at length, about the need for silver to make high-tech weapons and aerospace and F-35s and Tomahawk missiles. There's all huge amounts of silver in those items. And I would argue that's the primary reason they've held it down for all of these years. The West has. But it is the most conductive element known. It is the lifeblood of energy and data and power itself. You need it in order to transmit power across the grid. And in a world running on code and current, silver doesn't just move electricity. I would argue it moves civilization, and it does back the military-industrial complex. I haven't heard that they plan on confiscating it. What I will tell you, however, is that the U.S. government did just classify it a critical mineral. And a critical mineral means that it's part of national security, and it's part of the strategic plan of the United States. And I think it's about time they did it, because almost all of the silver the United States uses for industry or for the military-industrial complex or for making silver eagles is imported from Peru, from Mexico, from Canada primarily. And anything that is critical, if you're reliant upon supply chains from other countries, you're in a compromised position. But it's not just the United States that is viewing it this way. Recently, within the last week, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce has issued new rules governing exports of silver. And they say it's a aim to step up protection of resources. And this is something that you will see, because by more countries, you'll see this. But China's the largest silver refiner in the world. And if they're restricting exports starting in 2026, where every single export will require individual government licenses, and in essence, they're giving Beijing full control over every ounce leaving the country, and classifying it as a resource of national interest, not just the United States, who calls it critical mineral. Yeah, this is a big deal. They've put a floor underneath the price of silver, period. And so I think it's a very, very big deal. Will they confiscate it? Look, I have a different view on that. You have JP Morgan, who paid the largest fine ever issued by the Justice Department at the time of a $920 million for spoofing the silver market. Now, a lot of people thought they would get RICO charged. They got off with a slap on the wrist. Their head trader, Michael Nowak, who I sat at a table with for lunch, is, I think, still in jail. But they're allowed to be the custodian still of the world's largest silver trust, SLV, along with BlackRock. So when you talk about, would it make sense to go door to door and knock on everyone's door and say, give us your silver, when the world is promoting gold and silver ownership to countries like India and China and Russia, China, who has state-sponsored gold and silver accumulation plans? If we were to do that, it's bad enough to confiscate Russian treasury bonds for whatever the reason that the U.S. government cited, which is in essence a default as the world reserve currency. It's another thing to activate eminent domain and take your own people's metal, and I think it's game over at that point. So instead, you have the world's largest silver trust or silver stockpile held by J.P. Morgan and BlackRock. They're also the primary custodians of GLD as well, where they could come in on a Friday night, take the metal, which, by the way, the prospectus does not allow you and I to possess it. Ironically, Saudi Arabia took a huge position in SLV and made a lot of people annoyed that it was in SLV. Yet, at that level, you can take possession. You have to have what's called a basket. It's a huge amount, but the custodian can limit or completely cut off redeemability as well, even to the authorized participants. But the bottom line is this: you create a vehicle that siphons all the silver into one vehicle held by J.P. Morgan and BlackRock, and you can, on a Friday night, they could take all of that, put it in your money market account. It's there Monday morning, and they look the world in the face and they say, what? We didn't do anything. That you can't take possession of it anyway. You can buy physical silver in the country. We just closed the fund. The prospectus gives us the right to do that. You're free to buy physical silver in this country. So if they cross that line, it's a line that you don't come back from, in my opinion. No one will ever trust us again, even their own.
That makes sense.
The own population of the United States.
Well, okay, let me ask you this. Is there any reason, with silver being such an important metal, to the point where they classify it as a strategic resource, is there any reason why it has to be priced at less than gold?
No, I mean, you go back to biblical times, they were 1-to-1. Geologically, it's 7-to-1, meaning it used to be 16-to-1 for 5,000 years. And now the geological ratio, because silver is depleting, your skin is epidermal. Silver is found in nature, something called epidermis, and silver is called epithermal. It's right near the surface. So the big deposits were found long ago. It's disappearing, it's depleting. It used to be 16-to-1, it's now 7-to-1. Geologically, the ratio is 7 ounces of silver is mined for every 1 ounce of gold. And the interesting thing is, to your point, the organization, the branch of the U.S. government who wrote this critical minerals list is called the United States Geological Survey Commission. They're the ones who came out a year or two ago and said, in their estimation, silver could be one of, if not the first element struck from the periodic table of elements because it's depleting so fast.
Schectman starts with something most investors completely missed. The United States quietly reclassified silver as a critical mineral. This means silver is now officially considered essential to national security, military production, energy infrastructure, and advanced technology. That alone should raise alarms, because America imports almost all the silver it uses from Mexico, Peru, and Canada. In a world of fractured supply chains, rising geopolitical tension, and resource nationalism, that dependence is a major weakness. At the same moment, China, the world's largest silver refiner, just rolled out a policy that starting in 2026, every ounce of silver exported will require a government license. This gives Beijing full control over every gram leaving the country. And when the biggest refiner on Earth locks down its supply, it's not a routine bureaucratic move, it's strategic positioning before silver becomes too valuable or too scarce to let flow freely. Schectman also highlights the most overlooked current event in the market, the relentless physical drain from COMEX in November. Not even a primary delivery month. More than 15 million ounces were pulled out in the first 10 days. This is not retail buying. This is not hype. This is big, well-connected money quietly removing physical silver from the system before the public knows what's coming. Meanwhile, industrial demand is exploding. Silver is the most conductive metal known to science. It's critical for satellites, solar panels, electric vehicles, missiles, data centers, and the modern power grid. Yet geologically, the natural mining ratio has collapsed to roughly 7 to 1, meaning only 7 ounces of silver are mined for every ounce of gold. Historically, it was closer to 16 to 1. The collapse is a sign of depletion, even as demand rises to the highest level in history. And yet, the price ratio still sits around 70 to 1 or 80 to 1. Schectman calls this the single greatest mispricing in modern markets, one that cannot survive once industrial shortages collide with strategic stockpiling. His message to investors is blunt. Stop thinking like a trader and start thinking like someone preparing for a monetary shift. Silver availability will be the first thing to break, not the price. He encourages people to accumulate steadily, consistently, and early. Because once the bottleneck hits, there won't be metal available at any price. Every major signal, U.S. policy changes, China's restrictions, massive COMEX withdrawals, industrial shortages, and unprecedented global accumulation, points to one conclusion: silver is becoming a strategic global asset, and the people with insider access are positioning quietly while the public sleeps.
So to your point, from a standpoint of utility, of need, it's massively needed. There's nothing like it that conducts energy or light and heat the way that silver does. It's needed. Copper, people say, no, it's too slow. It doesn't work as well. It's needed. And to see it disappearing the way that it is, to see it be called critical, to see China say we're going to mitigate our exports, and when it's called critical, the U.S. can no longer export it if they decide to, if the president decides to. When you talk about it in relation to gold, yeah, I mean, it could very well close that gap. Could it go 1 to 1? Sure.
It used to be 1 to 1.
Times it was. Long time ago. But
okay, but let
7
me,
to 1, 10 to 1, yeah, absolutely.
Well, if it's being mined at 7 to 1 now. Now, how is gold? You said that silver is depleting. Is gold? It sounds like it's not depleting at the same amount. If it used to be 16 to 1, now it's 7 to 1. Where did they find gold, and could there be more gold than we realize, or have all the gold reserves been found compared to the silver?
Well, I think that's debatable. There are a lot of people that I respect a lot, like Bixweir, who would say that there's more gold out there than we know. But it wouldn't really be in the vested interest if it was the United States, for example, that held a lot more gold wherever. Bix talks about the Grand Canyon gold, and that's probably not going to come out anytime soon.
Sure.
But even still, if you took every ounce of gold on the planet, I don't even think there's 1 ounce for every person that's living. If you took the number of people living and the ounces of gold, it's a finite supply any way you look at it. And that's the allure. That's why it's been money. And one of the key characteristics of money is that it is a finite supply, that it is not something that can continue to expand forever at the whim of a politician. So any way you look at it.
But that sounds like silver. So what I'm trying to say is the silver to gold ratio not necessarily accurate? And perhaps silver should be a 1 to 1 already.
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, who knows where these numbers come from? You're right. It could be. From a standpoint
because some of this
utility,
is just arbitrary from a market position, standpoint. They held the price down, and it's just kind of like we do things because that's how we do things instead of what it really needs to be. And then once people realize what it really needs to be, then the market corrects pretty quickly, as long as it's not artificially held down.
Yeah, and I like the way you think, and you're right. I mean, we have to trust the numbers that we're given. But one of the things that I focus a lot on is, the big money that's importing metal into the United States. We don't know who that big money is. We can assume, we can say maybe it's the Treasury, or who knows. We can see all this gold and silver flowing. We can talk about China going as the second largest producer in the world, buying all the doré and the concentrate from Mexico and Peru, paying double what the West will and shipping it back and refining it themselves. We know silver is important, but we look at the deliveries into COMEX. Now, here you're talking the most sophisticated Western traders on the planet. I mean, the most sophisticated traders in the world, and they're on Wall Street. And whoever the hell is bringing in all this silver, like a good example of it is the November contract. Now, November is not a delivery month for silver. The next delivery month is December. So far, just in the first 10 days or so of the November delivery month, which isn't a primary delivery month, you can take delivery, but it's not a delivery month from a contract standpoint. We've seen, last I looked, which was 2 days ago, 3,029 contracts were delivered as of a couple days ago at 5,000 ounces apiece. That's 15,145,000 ounces of silver. Who the hell is doing this every single month since November? We've been seeing this every single month since November. And we don't know
Since
who
last
it is.
November? Since it's
Yeah,
November.
that's when Trump won the election. But what it shows for the silver delivery volume, that it's massive in a non-delivery month. There is big money who isn't just big money. To your point, they have all the information, and information is key. They know where the ball is going, and whoever it is keeps bringing in billions of dollars worth of silver into the COMEX every month and taking possession or leaving some in the exchange in what's called a eligible account. Now, that it's not for delivery, it's being held in strong hands. But the amount of gold and silver coming into the country is unlike anything anyone has ever seen before in both metals. And I would argue these are the people who know the inside scoop. They don't do things at that level just for the hell of it. You're talking the biggest, most sophisticated money in the world who's closest to the information. They know where this is going.
If Andy Schectman is right, then we are standing at the edge of a major revaluation, a moment where silver and gold shift from investments to essential assets in a world where trust, supply chains, and currencies are breaking apart. The signs aren't subtle anymore. They're happening in public view, and the smart money isn't waiting. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think silver's real value will finally reveal itself, or will the system manage to suppress it a little longer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. If you want to stay ahead of these developments and understand the real moves happening in precious metals, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. There's much more coming, and you deserve to know before the rest of the world wakes up.